My name is Willard Watson. I'm the Programs and Outreach Director here at the Blowing Rock Art and History Museum. So tonight's event is the first in a series accompanying the exhibition, Small and Mighty Acts, Altar for Black Lives. I have the exhibition webpage open open on the screen. You should be seeing it right now. So Small and Mighty Acts is a volunteer grassroots organization whose mission is to help people meet their civic potential. And to quote Small and Mighty Acts Director Kara Hagan, quote, "We encourage people come together around the important things we have in common to act upon shared beliefs. We help make changes in our communities by offering events and workshops, in addition to providing time and space for individuals to connect with organizations and groups, creating a framework to network and plan around common goals," end quote. And Small and Mighty Acts serves as a platform to bolster the high country of North Carolina and beyond towards a more peaceful, just, and productive future. And in the summer of 2020, they put that into praxis by creating their Altar for Black Lives on King Street in downtown Boone. Some information about the altar, to quote a text panel from the exhibition. "The state-sanctioned murder of Black people in America finds historical roots in the overseer of the slave plantations, the destruction of Black communities like Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921, the lynchings of the Jim Crow era, and the mass incarceration of Black people, among other events. This legacy has been carried forward through the murder of Black people by police, made visible through social media platforms. The murder of George Floyd in May of 2020 sparked a global outcry and a resurgence of interest in the Black Lives Matter movement. In response to the murders, Small and Mighty Acts constructed an Altar for Black Lives as a call to action and place for our community to come together, grieve, and co-create an equitable future. The Altar for Black Lives is a recognition of the power and ritual in socio-political turmoil, as social change is not only a matter of policy, it is a matter of imagination and of the spirit," end quote. So Brahm is hosting the Altar for Black Lives in the Alexander Community Gallery until March 27th. But we have photographed every piece of the altar and created a web page for the exhibition that'll stay on our website for perpetuity. This has photographs of the altar when it was on site on King Street in downtown Boone. It also has photographs of every piece of art that was made for the altar. And much of this artwork was left anonymous. And at the bottom of the webpage, we have a form where you can claim your artwork so that we can get it back to you. Well, over the next 5 weeks, we will explore the intersections between social justice and creative expression. But tonight, y'all are here because we're going to examine the poem, "If They Should Come For Us" by Fatimah Asghar. Before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about our speaker tonight. Brittany Twitty is from a small town called Columbus, North Carolina, which is just down the mountain from Asheville. And she's currently enrolled in the Master's of Social Work program at Appalachian State University. And she intends to pursue a career in community education around mental health and social justice, particularly within communities of color. Brittany's also an intern with Small and Mighty Acts right now. So please join me in welcoming Brittany Twitty.
All right, I think we're good to go. Can everybody see my PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you all for your patience. I appreciate it. So like Willard said, we're going to be talking about the poem "If They Come For Us" today. All right. You did a great job with my bio. There's me. Like you said, my name is Brittany. My pronouns are she, her, hers. From Columbus, North Carolina. I got my BSW, which is a bachelor's in social work from UNC Wilmington in 2016. And so now I'm at App State, and I have the absolute pleasure of getting to work with Small and Mighty Acts. So I'm really happy to be here. Just a little run through of what you have gotten yourself into tonight. Basically, the plan is that we're going to read / listen to the poem. We're going to explore some themes, because this poem is good, obviously, but it's got a lot in there. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot. We could probably have a full month's worth of discussions based solely on different lines in the poem. So I really wanted to make it a little broader and talk about specific themes. So mainly identity, relationships, and community. And at the end, we'll have some time for questions and discussion. So a little bit about the poet who wrote If This Should Come For Us. So Fatima is a poet, filmmaker, educator, and performer. She is queer, Pakistani, Kashmiri, and Muslim American writer. Her work has appeared in a variety of journals, as well as different news outlets. She is the writer and co-creator of the Emmy-nominated series Brown Girls. She's a member of the Dark Horse Collective, a multiracial poetry collective whose work addresses the shared themes of intergenerational trauma, racial injustice, and queer identity. In 2017, she was awarded the Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation and was featured on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. She's the editor of Holla If You Hear Me, an anthology that celebrates Muslim writers who are also women, queer, gender nonconforming, and/or trans. Her debut book of poems, If They Come For Us, was released in August 2018, and the poem we're looking at today is the closing poem in that collection. So now I've got this video. I've got my volume turned all the way up, but you may or may not need to adjust your volume. And this is Fatima reading her poem with a visual. And let me know if you can't hear it.
If they come for us. These are my people, and I find them on the street and shadow through any wild, all wild. My people, a dance of strangers in my blood. The old woman's sorry dissolving to win. Bindi, a new moon on her forehead. I claim her my kin, and so the star of her to my breast. The toddler dangling from stroller, hair a fountain of dandelion seed at the bakery. I claim them too. The Sikh uncle at the airport who apologizes for the pat down, the Muslim man who abandons his car at the traffic light, drops to his knees at the call of the azan, and the Muslim man who drinks good whiskey at the start of Maghrib, the lone khala at the park bearing her kurta with Crocs. My people, I can't be lost when I see you. My compass is brown and gold and blood. My compass, a Muslim teenager, snapback and high tops gracing the subway platform. Mashallah, I claim them all. My country is made in my people's image. If they come for you, they come for me too. In the dead of winter, a flock of aunties step out on the sand. They're the buttas turned to ocean. A colony of uncles grind their palms, and 1,000 jasmines bell the air. My people, I follow you like constellations. We hear glass smashing the street, and the nights opening dark our names. This country's wood for the fire. My people, the long years we survived, the long years yet to come. I see you map my sky, the light, your lantern long ahead, and I follow.
So let's jump right in talking about our first theme. And I will say it might be helpful for some of you. I did have a link to maybe pull up a poem to reference back during the talk. Feel free to do that. So jumping right in, talking about identity. Who are you? This is a very seemingly simple question with a not so simple answer. Lots of things come into consideration of who a person is. So you've got gender, race, sexuality, class, ability, religion, nationality, age, ethnicity. All of these things combine, and at the intersection of that is us, is who we are. So these identities inform our ideas and beliefs about a host of issues, and they ultimately shape our worldview. Understanding that we ourselves are complex individuals informs our understanding of how we interact and how we're able to take in other people's perspectives. So reflecting not only on these identities that we hold personally, but how they inform our worldview has to happen if we're going to understand when it comes to interacting with people that have different identities as us. Also noting that these identities inform my experiences, they inform your experiences, as well as that informs my worldview, just like it informs yours. It's all connected. I'd also add to that the history of a person individually, but also of a collection of people is really important. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So I want you to think about the identities that you hold, the groups that you would consider yourself to be a part of. So for me, I am cisgendered, meaning that I identify with the biological sex that I was born, which is female. I am biracial, a combination of Black and white. I am Christian, I'm queer, I'm American, I'm a millennial. I come from a lower middle class family and privileged enough to attend university twice. So how do your identities shape your beliefs, your values, and your worldview? So for me, many of my identities are marginalized groups, whether population-wise or in power of influence. So I operate daily with an understanding that I have to not only function, but also attempt to thrive within these systems and structures that were not designed for people with identities like mine to do so. I also understand that when people see me, they'll make automatic assumptions about my identities and react accordingly. Now this one, obviously I feel it relates to everyone. Everyone has their own set of beliefs. They have their own set of biases that they bring to them every day. It's with us, and it's not something that we can just kind of leave to the side and pick up at our whims. We have to understand what biases that we have and then operate out of them because they're not going anywhere. So the best thing that we can do is understand what they are and do our best to operate out of them, especially with interacting with other people. It's so important to do. So now let's look back at the poem. So we know from Fatimah's biography that she considers herself queer, Pakistani, Kashmiri, Muslim, and also American. And through some additional research, as I was preparing for this, I learned that her parents died when she was younger, and she also considers herself an orphan. So these aren't definitely not all of her identities, obviously, but they're ones that she's publicly expressed and ones that she publicly claims. So what identities can we gather from her language inside the poem? Or rather, knowing her background, where can we see those identities emerge? So maybe in the use of language, you see words such as sorry, Bindi, Sikh, Azan, Maghrib, Kala, Kurta, Mashallah, Dubatas. So language shows a connection to culture. And in this case, South Asian and Muslim culture, as well as using the language of aunties and uncles. This most likely doesn't refer to a technical, genetic, or blood relationship between the author and the aunties and uncles, but rather it's related to an Indian custom that uses these terms for adults as a sign of respect. Now, I will say, as with most things, I want to note that just because something comes from a certain culture or is traditionally said within a culture, it does not mean that all of the people within that group or culture use that term exactly the way or even agree with the overall usage. So this is where our self-awareness skills come into play of knowing that certain customs and culture within cultures exist, but not just assuming that it fits every single person. And that's paramount. I'm currently taking a class at App in multicultural counseling. And the author of one of our textbooks talks about, his name's Donald Su, and he talks about the dangers of assuming an attitude, a behavior, or a trait is solely due to their presence in a certain identity group. And that's when we cross into stereotypes. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, not only tonight as we're talking about this, just in general as well. So throughout the poem, you see the phrase, my people. It's repeated quite a few times. She says this after mentioning different people: the old woman, the toddler dangling from the stroller, the Sikh man outside the airport, the Muslim man who abandons his car at the sound of the azan, the Muslim man who sips good whiskey, the lone kala at the park, the Muslim teenager on the subway platform, the group of aunties at the beach, the colony of uncles grinding their palms. So something to consider is, why are these her people? It can be assumed that people in the poem relate to the identities that we know Fatima to have: Muslim, American, Pakistani, Kashmiri, maybe even queer. So how do these identities inform her worldview? So that is something, of course, that if she were here, we would ask and listen and see what she has to say. But as worldviews are something that influence everything that we do, and as well as our values and beliefs, we can see hints of that within the poem. And so that brings us to the second theme, which is relationship. In addition to claiming people as my people, we also see a repetition of I claim them, which is a really, really bold statement. So what is the significance of that? So we can assume, once again, that the author does not know personally the people that she speaks of, yet she claims them. She also says that she will follow them and that they are her compass. So now we see that she is claiming them as hers, also following them as she goes forward, using them as her compass. My people, I follow you like constellations. That is so powerful. What type of relationship is that? To know someone personally, but to have this bond, this solidarity that stems from what? Shared identity, shared experience, mutual understanding of something. Think about the people in your life. So when we were talking about my people earlier, who came to mind? Of course, we have multiple groups that we belong to, just as we have multiple identities. But what makes those people your people? Was it a shared identity group or multiple shared identity groups? Is it a shared location? Think about the relationship that you have with your people. So for me, as a Black person, I think of Black people as my people. Walking down the street and seeing someone Black, having that instant connection and bond, it's powerful. As a woman, those are my people. As someone who's queer, those are my people. When someone is a part of your people, when you claim them as yours, what does that mean? You care for them? You take responsibility for them? Do you advocate them? You love them? Fatima calls people her compass, says that she will follow them. Is that something that we do as well? Does it depend on the group that we're talking about? Which is highly likely, it very well may. But how is a relationship like this able to form? An added layer on top of the different identity groups is a shared history among that group. So it's important to consider, and we can see a strong reference to history in the poem. If you stop and think about the known history between Muslim people and the United States, you see a lot going on. Strict immigration laws, 9/11, travel ban, hate crimes. As well as you also consider the history of the US between other marginalized groups: Indigenous or Native, Black, disabled, Jewish, Japanese, gay or queer, those people that are living in poverty. And unfortunately, the list goes on. Even right now, the reason that we are gathered virtually is because of a global virus that is taking the lives of marginalized groups at astronomical rates, namely the elderly, disabled, and people of color. So how does the history of a shared experience form a relationship between people in a group? I think it develops trust, kind of that sense of we gotta stick together. If someone else doesn't do it, who else will? The elderly and our histories play a strong role in a lot of cultures in some way or the other. Also, knowing where we came from so we can know where we're going is also a big idea. Like the slide says, if we don't know our history, we are doomed to repeat it. So in the poem, we see the long years we've survived, the long years yet to come. This shows an awareness of the history that connects her people. And that bond, that connection makes even more sense when you add in a shared history. So of course, the author will follow her people. Of course, she will claim them. Of course, she will use them as her compass, because people have been doing it long before she was here and will continue long after she's gone. And really that's true for all of us within our various groups. So community, what bonds this group of people? What unites this group of people? They are a people of different identities, but still a people. So we are human. If you live in and claim this country, you are American. If you live in the state, you are a North Carolinian. If you live in one of the counties, Watauga, or one of the others, you're part of the high country. So we are a people, we are a community. Community can be divided in a variety of ways. On the slide, I've got a couple definitions from Oxford Languages. The first one says, a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristic in common. And the second, a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. Feeling of fellowship with others. What does that mean? Like how do we know that something is a feeling of fellowship? How can a feeling be so strongly defined? So the identity groups that we talked about earlier, they're a community, location, just like the high country. So the question is, how do we be in community with people from different identity groups as us? That's like the $1 million question. Is it possible? I personally would like to say so. I've witnessed it in my life that it is possible. I've also witnessed the opposite. So how do we do it? How do we attain it? And for me, I think one of the keys was right here in this poem. If they come for you, they come for me too. If they come for you, they come for me too. That's a massive statement, absolutely massive. That shows love, that shows boldness, bravery. And I think that's it. Being able to stand up and say, if something is harming you, if something is a danger for you, if something is hard for you, I'm there. I've got you. I think that is a piece of what we need. I think that definition we talked about, having one thing in common, and we do. We're all human. So we've already got that. Check it off. So how do we take up the arms? How do we take up the burdens of other people, especially ones that we don't even know about or we can't even experience ourselves? I mean, I wish I had like $1 million answer. I wish I knew exactly how this is done, but community is a piece of that. Knowing the people that are around you, knowing the people that you interact with, whether it be in your location, and of course in like a pre-COVID time, maybe the grocery store, knowing the people around you, and not just knowing them as, oh yeah, they live a couple doors down, or oh yeah, we have this class, or we have this thing that we have in common. It's knowing I like see you fully for who you are. I accept you fully for who you are. And your struggles are my struggles. Your burdens are my burdens. Your fights are my fights. Now, like I was just saying, that doesn't mean that we aren't different. And it definitely doesn't mean that we ignore those differences, for sure. Really, it means the exact opposite. It means we listen, we learn, we understand those differences. We see the value in those differences. When we talk about and share our histories, our traditions, our cultures, just our viewpoints, we give others the chance to learn more about us and about a culture that maybe they might not be a part of or have never even been exposed to. So I will say it is important to keep in mind that it's not the responsibility of people within a marginalized group to educate people outside of the group. Just like when writing this poem, Fatima was doing something that she loves. She was doing something that she wanted to do. And the gift of it is allowing people like me and people like you to be able to see into her world, to be able to see her worldview, get to see her culture. And that's a gift. And if we take that reality, if we view the interactions that we have with other people, our meetings with other people, as getting to know them, getting to learn about them as a gift, I think that's it. That seeing the value in another person just simply because they are another person is critical. So our access to information is easier than ever before, people say. The fact that even right now, we are in Black History Month, Black Heritage Month, and I know daily I'm seeing showcases about people who are doing art, who people are writing poems, making songs, people who are also doing community activism, just learning about the heritage of Black people. That's a key opportunity to like step into that. If it's a community that you're not a part of, that's a key moment to like just listen and learn and observe and take in. The same thing goes for all the other months that are representative for people to be able to learn and to listen. So I do have a little bit of a challenge to everyone that's on this call. And my challenge to you is to listen. And like really listen. Don't listen just to react. Don't listen just to be able to respond. Just listen. Get to know the people around you that belong to all different identity groups. Do outside research about different cultures. Expose yourself to films, to art, to books, movies, all types of things from people that belong to different groups. Literally just like we did tonight. To be able to look at a piece of work that's from someone to get a different perspective. Follow social media accounts from people from different groups. Because I imagine that even tonight, as we were going through this poem, someone that saw that who identifies as Kashmiri or Pakistani or Muslim American have a sense of relation or representation when reading this. And so when it comes to social media, it's the same thing. We want to see ourselves reflected. We want to be reminded that the way that we look, the way that we think, the way that we feel, we're not alone in that, and that there is a unity and a community within that. And also, I get like a lot of news from social media. I feel like that's something that a lot of people are doing. So make sure you're following people and accounts of people from groups that you don't belong to. And more than one of each, keeping in mind that group experiences are not single perspectives. Just as you don't speak for all the people in your groups, the same is true for others. So I just want to thank y'all for listening to me talk for a good amount of time. And I guess we can open it up to any questions or any discussion. And if no one has specific questions or anything, if there's anything, any lines from the poem or anything that kind of stood out to you, feel free to kind of bring those up.
Sorry for the crying toddler in the background. But one thing that always stands out to me about this poem is that if, like the poem says, if they come for us, it necessarily means that at some point everyone will be consumed if we're in the business of coming for each other, right? In some way, shape, or form, that nobody will be spared. And you know, that means a lot of different things. It doesn't always just mean death. It means metaphorical deaths as well. And so whenever I read this poem, I like to think of the ways that we could transform that idea of what it might mean to come for one another in a way that is loving, instead of I'm out to get you, right? And that other people are out to get us. And also the feeling of paranoia that we have in our culture that just seems so embedded, like you don't trust anybody, and who can be trusted? And if we trust you, what does that even mean? Are there levels of trust, right? And how do you gain the trust of others? And also then what breaks people's trust? I think this poem is really, it continues to be timely. It was timely when it was written, it's timely now. And I don't know, I feel like every time I read it, something new comes to me. So I appreciate that you did this tonight. Thank you.
Do you think that the way she talks about the different people, the Sikhs and the Muslims and all, is a way of saying, I claim them all, because she's recognizing how the partition and the great schism within India that destroyed, in a way, her family, although created a larger family, because she talks about her family. I read the whole book so I would understand the poem better, about how when she fills out those forms at the doctor, she leaves the information about family blank, because her family is a different kind of family. And that's something I had never thought about before, you know. But she said, the dedication is for my family, blood and not. So she talks about the horrors, but there's also a sense of, I guess I've started to answer my question, but do you think there is kind of an acceptance of something, you know, all the people who were torn apart, but who, when she sees them, she loves them anyway and accepts them? Not for the horrible things they did, but because they were India, her India was a different India before it was torn apart. If that makes sense. What do you think about that?
No, I think that definitely makes sense. That's a really good point. And in my research, I came across where she spoke at length about the partition in India. And I think that having the acknowledgement of something that happened within a culture doesn't necessarily mean that they're not your people anymore, or doesn't necessarily mean that you don't still have a place, or that they don't still have a place. Because the same thing with any kind of relationship, if someone does something that hurts you or hurts your feelings, like, you want to talk about that. You want to say, hey, I was hurt because of this, and you have opportunities to grow and to learn and to change. But that being said, there is also things where there's a boundary where you need to protect your own health and sanity. And so sometimes that looks like disregarding people. But I still think that we can have that connection of, these are like still my people. And you can almost look at it, if it's someone that you've had to part ways with for whatever reason as almost like a ringing kind of mournfulness of like, this is still my person, these are still my people, but because of this, we're like separated. And looking at it from that point, it like makes it even deeper.
That's right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
Hi, Brittany. I'm Joel. I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that, well, first, thank you for doing this. This was excellent. But a few things when you were talking that kind of stuck with me was this idea of like who we follow and who we trust and who our compasses are, and how different communities may have different like attachments to like who we trust and why. I think about like the people who have come before me, who have paved the way and shown me guidance and given me wisdom. But then I also think about people who are lost and who are following folks who are spewing hate and misinformation, and just what ties that like bind us to these truths, right? And so I don't really have any answers or anything. That's just kind of what I'm thinking and like what I want to journal about after this is over. Just this idea of like, we have people we follow, but sometimes they're misguided and some of those paths are stronger. I don't know, but yeah, I just wanted to give my thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think, and also like the people we follow, and if they're misguided, like what do we do? Like what has to happen to even recognize that? Like, is it someone from another group, another like attachment of our people who is like, hey, because I love and I care for you and I carry this, I see this, you know? That now I want to journal. That's really good.
Well, that's why y'all got to participate in our Writing on Justice workshop next 2 Wednesdays with Kara. You know, we'll be able to collectively journal and, you know, process this and then, you know, do that. But just kind of jumping off what you just said, Jewel, who do we follow? So earlier today, I had to go run an errand and I was following someone on the road, and the person in front of me had some bumper stickers, right? You know, it's like, who do we ascribe as our identity groups, right? And I'm looking and it's like, oh, there's a Green Bay Packers sticker. Okay, football fan. Then there's a Yosef Club sticker. It's like, all right, so it was like a local football fan. Then there's a Trump 2020 sticker, and we're like, oh man. And then there was one that was a, the sticker said, is like, Obama called me a clinger, Hillary called me a degenerate, Trump called me an American. Right. And like, whoa. And just like that identity part is like, who do we follow? Why do we subscribe to different groups? So that just made me think of that while you were speaking, Joel. And I don't want to like take us too far off on a tangent, but the concepts of following and the compass was beautiful imagery for me as well. And I just found myself writing down the, you know, I follow your constellations, you light my sky, you're my lantern. And this concept of like something that you're like maybe holding, to me, I thought about like how you can hold people up and they can seem so distant, or it's like people from your past mentors, people that might not be with you anymore, how they're still, you know, you see them from afar, like, you know, Mufasa in the clouds. Thank you, Brittany. This was really great.
No, thank you for sharing. Those are like really good and powerful thoughts for sure. I mean, I think that when I was doing my research for this and just kind of doing some reading, the things that people brought up of who are your people, who do you follow, what does that mean? Those were consistently brought up, and it made me think more in depth about why are people my people, and something that kind of not like scared me, but when I would say a combination of Jewel and Willard, what you were saying about what if you're following someone that is like misguided, it made me think about people that are following people that are spewing hate, particularly with like towards me and groups that I am a part of. It's really easy to instantly say, you know, whatever, they hate me, I hate them, you know, write them off. But reading this poem and really thinking about that idea of who do you follow and like why and how that comes to be, it almost makes me understand in a way. Not understand hate, let's be clear, but you know, just understand how that happens. Because the idea of being lost and or like being surrounded physically maybe by people, but still like feeling lost and having like no one that you could talk to or lean to or even follow when you feel lost, like that's incredibly, I mean, it's sad, it's heartbreaking. And so understanding how if you're someone that's in that spot and hearing someone speaking to you and you feel like they're talking directly to you and speaking to the things that are weighing on your heart, then it kind of makes sense how that line follows. And once you've got someone that like you can follow or you feel like is a part of your group, that's hard to let go. And it's hard. And if you can convince yourself that this is the right thing or this is what you need, then it's like, how far can that go? Because the other option is what, breaking ties and going back to like solitude or like being alone. And that's a really hard choice for a lot of people to make. So it's definitely given me another layer of understanding. So when I go to talk to people that are different than me, or if I make a comment and someone's like, I really don't agree with that, it kind of opens the door for me to start at a level of basic understanding of we're really just like want to feel loved and we want to belong and we want to be a part of a group. We want to be a part of my people. And so that really opens the door for a lot more, I guess, empathy and compassion. So I guess that's just one thing that I hope that everyone's able to kind of take away, because as we go on, I mean, obviously we know the culture and like the state of the world that we're in right now. And so just more empathy, more compassion, more care for each other, but also for ourselves, I guess, is something that I hope that that everyone can kind of take away and reflect on their own kind of values and meanings behind those things. So yeah, and thank you again for tuning in and joining. It's nice to just like see people that I don't know and to be able to just meet on this and then instantly have a conversation about something. That's one of my favorite things about writings and art, that we can all just kind of come together and look and we instantly have this thing that bonds us because we're experiencing something at the same time. So I think that's really cool.
Yes, thank you, Brittany, for your just powerful words today and for sharing Fatimah's work with us. I'm definitely going to go pick up the full book now and explore her work more. And I hope y'all are able to make it out to Brom to check out the altar in person. It'll go down on March 27th, but then the website will stay up. And yeah, so next Thursday at 11, we'll be premiering the video Songs of Freedom. And that's just, it's a YouTube video. And hope y'all check it out. And then we'll be having back on Zoom on the 17th for the writing workshop.